And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Addy Ads here, Anakin Skywalker, YouTube's chosen one. I'm here with another episode of Addy Chats. Very fortunate for Mr. Sam Samworth, ex-prison officer at HMP Strangeways, Her Majesty's Prison, Manchester. Sam, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
No, you're welcome, Ads. Anytime, mate. Love talking, love chatting, and it's nice to meet new people as well. So thank you as well.
No problem. Yeah, and I always love talking to people from across the pond.
Exactly.
Sam is a ex-prison officer, not guard, prison officer at HMP Strangeways, also known as Her Majesty's Prison, Manchester. He spent 11 years working as a prison officer, aka at Strangeways. A tough Yorkshireman with a soft heart, Sam had to deal with it all: gangsters and gangbangers, terrorists and psychopaths, addicts and the mentally ill, men who should not be locked up, and men who should never be let out. His book Strangeways is a shocking and at times darkly funny account of life in a high-security prison. Sam tackles self-fires and self-harmers and goes head-to-head with some of the most dangerous men in the country. He averts a Christmas Day riot after turkey is taken off the menu and replaced by fish curry, and stands up to officers who abuse their position. As stabbing cuts saw prison system in Britain descend into crisis, the stress of the job, the suicides, the inhumanity of the system, and one assault too many left Sam suffering from PTSD. This raw, searingly honest memoir is a testament to the men and women of the prison service and the incredibly difficult job we ask them to do. So that is the short bio intro to Sam's work and his book. His book Strangeways is available on Amazon, and it's got 4.5 and 5-star reviews on both Amazon and Goodreads. So everybody can go check that out, and we will talk about that in this chat. But first, I want to get an update on Sam and his status in lockdown, because the whole country of England, as far as I know it, is in lockdown right now. Isn't that true, Sam?
Yeah, it's got a little bit more serious this last couple of days. We've probably been in lockdown for a week and a half now. I think the reality this last couple of days has really started sinking in for a lot of people. We've experienced similar things over here to you have in America. Initially, a lot of people panic buying. Supermarkets were crammed, nothing on the shelves, absolute chaos, really. But no social distancing as such. However, this last week, very, very serious. If I give you, for instance, we have a local shop. It's only a small shop. And as you enter that now, they've now made it one way. And every 2 meters, they've drawn a line. So if someone's in front of you, you have to maintain that 2 meters all the way around to the checkout. My missus is actually frontline. She works in a care home with dementia patients. You know, she's reported roads. Normally a morning commute, not super busy because she goes at 7 a.m. However, you know, 1 or 2 cars on the motorway where it was full. So, especially the last couple of days, I think people are taking it a little bit more serious. Where I'm based in Yorkshire, it is very, very quiet. People are very polite, crossing the roads, you know. Everyone's speaking to each other. You know, a lot of people are stood at the garden gates, not actually leaving the properties. So as I walk past with a dog, you know, you're exchanging friendly terms and things like that. However, other parts of the country, if you look at London, still tube trains are absolutely rammed with people going to work. So very little social distancing at all. So I can only report from where I am. You know, it's got very serious. If you actually go to a local supermarket now, very civilized queuing outside. There's lines on the floor. As you take a trolley, they give you a wipe to wipe the trolley handle, hand sanitizer as you go in. And like I say, once there's a certain amount of people in the shop, it's 5 people out, 5 people in. There is stuff on the shelves now. Like I say, we've had 2 weeks where there was nothing, whereas now the shelves are stocked and you can get everything again. But yeah, it's got very serious.
Yeah, that's good. I would hope that supplies don't become a problem, and I would not expect them to. But that is unfortunate that London doesn't seem to be social distancing. I actually did not know that the tubes were still going today. Is that going to change anytime soon, or because it seems like
the problem in London is the Lord Mayor has a say in how the trains and tubes are run. So what he's done, he's cut the tubes from, say, every 5 minutes to every 20 minutes, because he said there's no need for them because people shouldn't be going to work. However, there's still a massive amount of people going to work every day. So they are literally rammed. They're literally crammed on. No social distancing at all.
And if you decrease the number of tubes that are going, it's just going to increase the number of people that have to go because there are less trips. So that doesn't make any sense.
Of course it is. You know, I don't know how serious it's going to be in London. Obviously, I don't know how many people are in London. It obviously the biggest part of our population. I don't know. It's very similar to New York, maybe 12 million, maybe more. But I would think that they will take a big hit. So
I wanted to talk about this tweet that you just tweeted less than 20 hours ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you want to expand on this at all? Because I wanted to talk about the prisons and the reality of this pandemic in the prison system as well. So
just let me get my glasses, mate, so I can have a read.
Oh, no problem. I'll read it out loud as you're getting your glasses on too. How about letting people volunteer to work in prison? ? Then all the activists, reform groups, all the people who know how to put things right can have a taste of the reality of life inside. Ex-prisoners and ex-officers need not apply, as they already know the bitter truth. And that was less than a day ago, as I said.
Right. Okay. So I'm quite new to this Twitter thing. I think I signed up in February, so I'm still getting a hang of it. I'll tell you where I'm coming from, Ads. As an ex-prison officer, I'm not just there to speak about the prison officer's role. You know, I can see it from a prisoner's point of view. I can see it from families of officers and families of prisoners. Also, like I say, in this country, like your own, there's a lot of activists, reform groups. You know, they're looking at how prisons are run, how prison doesn't work, how it's inhumane. So a lot of these people are all sort of coming at the prison service at once. You know, you should be doing this. We should be releasing low-risk prisoners. We need to do this. The fact is, if you've never done the job or you've never been inside as a prisoner, then you have no idea what it's really like. So what I'm saying, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, is, you know, perhaps if you were actually in there, then the reality of our prison system now is to get people out for a shower, maybe a phone call, to try and keep some organisation and social distancing is near impossible with the staffing levels they've got. Our prison service has suffered over the last 5 years a massive loss of staff. You know, the staffing numbers, actual amount of staff that now work in the system is far less than it was 5 years ago. And without enough staff, you can't get prisoners out of cell. Prisoners are spending more time in cell. It's going back to 23-hour bang up, which it used to be 30 years ago. You know, that's not good. However, 30 years ago, there were lots of staff. Now, not so much. So what I'm basically saying is, you know, the reality of the thing is, staff as it is now will have all on serving meals, because I'm quite sure they may well be serving meals behind the door, giving out medication, maybe a shower, and maybe a phone call. I think the prison service is already down 20% in staff since the lockdown started. That's people who are self-isolating or people who are ill.
And it has already gotten into a couple prisons, correct?
It has.
Yeah.
Truth be known, no one knows the actual figures. Again, I understand people being upset if their loved ones are inside. However, prisoners have phones illegally, unauthorized. They'll have access to Twitter. They'll have access to Facebook. They'll have access to news channels anyway.
Oh, well.
If they started putting the real figures out there, it might cause panic more so than there already is. And it could also, what you don't want is riot situations. You don't want to be unlocking prisoners and then end up with people not going behind the doors. Disorder, really, like
Right.
disorder inside. So it's a very, very volatile place to be.
Mm-hmm. I have a friend in HMP Thameside actually right now.
Is that private prison down London? I think it is private.
I don't know if it's private or not. Yeah, but it is. Yeah, it's right on the Thames, right? Yeah, right in London. Yeah, he got recalled pretty much at the beginning of this year in January, so right before all this happened. And yeah, he's actually a fellow YouTuber, and I've interviewed him as well, and it was quite an unfortunate and unfair recall as far as everybody around him can tell, which is an unfortunate situation. But do you think that there is a chance of this pandemic wreaking havoc on the prison systems, particularly in England?
It's not going to be any less than it's affecting the public, is it? If you're looking at, right, nobody knows the figures. I watch a doctor on YouTube. There's lots of information about. It's called Dr. Campbell. So what he's looking at, he's the rest of the world and the UK, what's happening, and what he's saying is, if you take Italy, their actual death rate is horrendous. It's round about the 9-10% mark. However, what he's saying is that's for the known cases. The known cases might be 10 times greater, in which case that would bring the death rate down to 1%. So without having accurate figures, however, the prison system's going to be no different. If you look at my missus going into that old people's home, if it gets in there, a lot of them people are vulnerable. They're really elderly, a lot are sick. It will wreak havoc. So the prisons are going to be the same. If it gets inside, there will be some deaths. However, it's how they manage the outbreak. Whether they'll be able to get medical supplies, whether they'll have enough staff, because they're going to have to deal with people who are unwell, but also try and, look after the other people serving meals and that. And in a minute, it'll just be a logistical nightmare.
Definitely.
There might be a possibility, I don't know, that they bolster the prison service. Maybe they'll send the army in to help. Maybe they'll ask for volunteers. I don't really know, Ads. It's a very difficult one.
Definitely.
But
how do you think about how your leaders, both locally in Yorkshire and nationally as well, have responded?
Right, nationally, I'm quite happy with the way our government's acted. There will always be people, people who are knocking it, and we haven't done this, we haven't done that. No government in the world, no country has faced this in our lifetime. So what they have done in this country is, they're trying to encourage people to lock down. There's a lot of industries. I'll tell you what's impressing me. some of our major manufacturers. I don't know whether you've heard of the Dyson Hoovers. You have them
Dyson.
over there.
Dyson makes like vacuums, doesn't they? And like
They're
home
the ones, yeah,
appliances. Yeah.
yeah. They've changed their factory over to making ventilators.
Oh wow.
Rolls-Royce, the car manufacturers,
Mhm.
you'll have heard of them.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, they're making ventilators.
Wow. It's like World War II. Like
Exactly.
they're switching
Exactly.
to
So you know what? That is impressing me. There's a
mhm.
company called Brewdog, and I know in America and that you have a lot of these what do you call them? These small brew companies that set up
Microbreweries.
microbreweries, right? So Brewdog is sort of a microbrewery that has taken off. They're now making Brewdog sanitizer.
Oh wow.
So they've turned their factory over to making hand gels, which again, it's like the war effort, you know. The
Mhm.
government's saying we need this, and factories are changing their manufacturing to make supplies and sanitizer and ventilators.
That's awesome.
Then our NHS, you know, our National Health Service, they wanted 250,000 volunteers. In this country, we have got 1.5 million people who are self-isolating for 3 months. They're the most vulnerable, not all necessarily old, but one of my friends comes into that. He's always ill, a lot of time in hospital, a lot of steroids, a lot of antibiotics. His girlfriend has actually moved out, so he's now living on his own because she's still working, so she could in effect come
Right.
home and infect him.
Right.
And they asked for 250,000 volunteers to take medical supplies and food supplies to these people. They've
Wow.
actually had, I think to date, about over 500,000, 600,000 people have volunteered.
Wow, that's awesome. It's great how, I mean, I guess the silver lining in a crisis like this is it kind of forces the country and citizens to cooperate and come together.
I think it is. It's like you said. It's like a bit of a war effort. Obviously, the concerns in the country, same as yourself. So people are worried about the mortgages. Um, so people can apply for a mortgage break now. They put that in place. So during the time of lockdown, you don't have to worry about paying your mortgage.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
businesses that are being forced to close, what the government has said, if you retain your employees, the government will pay 80% of their wages during this time,
Oh
which
wow.
again is pretty amazing. And then these people who are self-employed, they've now said that people who are self-employed, they will pay them up to, I think, 80% of their earnings, up to £2,500 a month.
Wow.
They've also, somebody else said, you know, what about social housing? People who are in rented properties. So people in rented properties are going to get the same break as mortgage owners now. So basically, hopefully, it's not going to lead to mass unemployment. Companies are going to retain the staff. The government's going to be paying them. Self-employed people will be able to start their businesses up again, and nobody's going to lose their housing.
Wow, that is awesome. It
So,
seems like you guys are taking care of it with a better plan than we are, as far as I can tell.
like I said, right, there's always going to be people who are going to say, well, what about these and what about those? You
Right.
know, me personally, you know, they're making a massive effort. I believe they're also trying to take all the homeless people off the streets.
Yeah.
Um,
It's gonna
and
ravage them
hotels
otherwise.
obviously get used. So I believe in some cases they're actually putting these people in hotels because obviously they're very vulnerable.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I would say they're the
for
most
me,
vulnerable.
for me, it's a massive effort. I'm happy. Like I say, you know, there's always people who will grandstand. You know that with Twitter,
Of
people
course.
grandstand. You know, they make it about themselves instead of something else. But for me, they're making an effort.
Definitely.
Yourselves looking, you know, you're going a similar way. Obviously, your population is so huge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, the lockdown, it appears that it's being taken very serious.
Wow, that's
In your
good.
neck.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
here it's you see a spectrum of behavior that I can tell, and this is based off of my experience. And then I talked to my friend who is also in a college campus, but he's in St. Louis, so he's in a much bigger city than I am. But is the same thing. Basically, it was the young people that whereas you see the spectrum of behavior where people are being very disciplined and self-controlled
spring
and
break.
taking it seriously. Yeah, and then there's the others who are not. And I don't know. It seems people don't understand the concept of invisible spreading, but it is what it is. I'm trying to get the word out, and it seems like people are becoming more aware of it. And another thing too is like my intention was not to fearmonger. It was just to, I think, get people to understand the seriousness of this situation because it is something that we've never experienced in our lifetimes, as you said, and it's completely new for this world that we live in. But as
I,
far as your experience in your career, Sam, what would you say to a young person who is thinking about doing what you did, or working as a prison officer, or working otherwise in some capacity in the prison system? For example, I have thought about teaching or tutoring in the prison system. What if somebody wants to work in the prison system? What would you say to them?
right. Okay. Obviously, my view hasn't changed. It's never changed. I've spoke to a lot of people. Sean Atwood, the first time I met him, he says you need to get on social media because what I was fearful of was negativity. I didn't want no negativity towards my family because you're always going to get haters. You're going to get animosity, aren't you? That sort of thing. But what I found with social media, real positive, a lot of people have reached out to me. Ex-officers, ex-prisoners, people who are thinking of going into the job, just asking for advice. And I basically, it's very cliched, but what I said to a lot of people, like a lot of people have read my book, I says, look, if you've read the book, you'll be going in eyes open. You'll have an idea what it's about. Give it a go. Um, but what I would say to you, especially if you've got a family, if you try it and you can see that you're changing or it's affecting you, no job is worth losing your mental health.
Definitely.
The big problem they've got in this country at the moment is the struggling to recruit people with life experiences. Yeah. When I started, there was a young lad on our course, 21. However, when he went into Strangeways, there was lots of experienced staff around. So, you can learn. You can watch them or learn yourself, but you've got experienced staff. The problem now is, excuse me, over the whole of the prison service, it's a very inexperienced workforce and they've got a lot of young people. Now, obviously, you're a young lad, Hats. I don't know how old you are, but imagine at 21, maybe facing up to someone of my age in prison who doesn't like the way you've spoke to me, you know. So
It's
maybe
intimidating.
exactly. It is a very intimidating place anyway. So we've got a lot of inexperienced staff, a lot of young staff, and it's a super hostile, angry, intimidating place to work. What you do need in prison, I talk about this all the time, and I can't emphasize it enough. Dynamic security in prison, you've got three forms of security. Yeah, you've got procedural, which is your procedures and your rules, which is self-explanatory. You got a physical, you got your gates, your bars, your razor wire, your walls. Then you've got dynamic security. And that is the relationship me and you have. Yeah. So in my time, 2001, I met people who I was still dealing with 10, 15 years later. So they knew me. They knew what I was like. and you build up relationships. And to a certain extent, there's some respect, and they'll know you're a decent officer, and maybe the guy you're working with not so. So if they want something, they'll come to you. But not only that, the easiest and most boring part of the job was having enough staff to get prisoners out every day. So when they're out, you know, they're up to no good, or they're having showers, or they're milling about, you're walking about, you can see, oh, ads, he don't look very happy today, walk over, might be getting bullied or something like that. Or somebody else might look angry, you know, what's going on here? And that staff prisoner relationships made it a safe place to be. Yeah, you'd have a crack. When I was on K-Wing, 200 prisoners, 6 staff on the landings, 2 on each landing, 200 prisoners. I probably have 200 interactions in the day. You know, some would be like, Smithy, get behind your door or whatever. But they get to know you. That was the easiest part of the job, getting prisoners out. Because they can do stuff. They can phone the family. They can have showers. They were getting some exercise. Now, there's that few staff that once there's an incident that takes staff away from those prisoners, the only solution is to lock them up. And that's what's happening. So instead of having enough staff to deal with incidents and get prisoners out, there's only enough staff to get them out. So there's incidents every day in every prison. Consequently, we're going back to the dark ages where people are being locked up in a room the size of a normal family bathroom with a TV and a mate for 23 hours a day. It's not good. It's creating a lot of animosity and a lot of anger.
I think a lot of people don't realize the stuff that's going on in prisons, especially in the Western world, in the United States and the United Kingdom. So being around prisoners, like, what is that like, being around killers and psychos and pedophiles, and how does that change you?
Right, okay. First thing, right, time in doesn't make you good at the job, you know. So once, let's just take a 5 years into the job, yeah. It doesn't make you experienced. It doesn't make you good at the job. Some people, after 6 months, they'll be a natural. They'll just take to it, yeah. Other people, it'll take them longer. But what that time in gets you used to, and every prison officer is being around prisoners. So what's it like? Okay. When you're on a wing, a normal wing, most of the prisoners, I had no clue what they were in for. Your paedophiles, rapists, sex offenders, what you call vulnerable prisoners, they were housed separate to the rest of the prison population, yeah? So staff used to choose to work with those types of prisoners. Those areas to work, not usually a lot of bother. They were usually quite quiet. They might be quite mithersome and demanding, but maybe not an aggressive population, not like the rest of the prison. I never fancied that. I used to work overtime shifts, you know, where there were sex offenders and that, but I wouldn't personally have chose to work there permanently.
And people listening might wonder why that is. Why would that be, Sam?
Why would I not want to work? The fact is, they are quite demanding, and I think it's how people go about the business, and you could tell the tone. Like when I worked on K-Wing, you know, we had 200 prisoners at one time. We had 35 gang members. Now, if you split them down the middle, they were 2 rival gangs from Moss Side in Manchester, yeah? Incidentally, one was affiliated to the Bloods and one affiliated to the Crips in some way.
In the United States.
Yeah. So 35, so they're sort of on different sides of the fence. On top of that, you might have 25 prisoners with mental health problems. Another 25 disruptive prisoners, and then the rest of that population, you might have 25 murderers on there. See, a lot of people think murderers are housed in different places. In British jails, you could have somebody who's in for a driving offence in with a murderer. It's that sort of thing. So that doesn't really bother people. Plus, you get to know the bullies, you get to know the violent, hostile prisoners. To be fair, maybe 95% of prisoners just get on with the jail, just do the time. Some might not interact with staff very much, some might, but the vast majority, just get on with it. So,
are there any prisoners that you like, or is the furthest that goes maybe a certain sort of contextual mutual respect?
Right, okay, that's a good question. That you taught on training. I did training twice. Did private sector training and public sector, which is very similar. So a lot of the training is very cliche. So what they say to you, friendly, not friends. Yeah. I used to get on with people, because my nan used to say, I'll not say this in my Yorkshire accent, she won't understand what I'm going to say. But what she used to say was, speak and treat people how you'd like to be spoke to. In Yorkshire, it's tret your sen, which you understand, but how you would like to be treated yourself. And that's how I used to treat people. If you were a prisoner, I'm giving you benefit of the doubt straight away. You don't have to earn my respect. If you turn out to be a bit of a knob or a dick, then, I'd be like, whoa. I got on with people, I'm a people person. I talk to people properly. I've got a bit of presence, obviously, 6'18" stone, but I'm not, once people start talking to me, I'm not a meathead. I can communicate with people. So I got on really, put it this way, Ads. There is prison officers that would be fearful of meeting prisoners on the outside. If you're in the supermarket with your wife or downtown in Manchester or something like that. I met loads of prisoners, mate. Never fearful. A lot of them will go out the way to come and speak to you. I remember one lad once chased me. I heard somebody shouting, turned round, couldn't see. Chased me about 100 yards with his little girl. Mr. Samworth, look, this is my baby girl. Hands are over, blah, blah, blah. So,
and that was outside.
No problem. Now, I've got two really good friends who were lads who were locked up when I were inside. I've connected with, or rather, they connected with me because they both saw me book. One of them was on holiday, and his missus bought it to take on holiday for him. And then the other one just contacted me via Messenger. We meet up for a coffee regular. I've got no problem,
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, there's prison officers that will be turning in the graves, mate, because they
bad
see
karma,
it as
right?
them. Exactly. For me, it's not a problem. To be honest, some of the prisoners were far better than some of the people I work with. Do you know what I mean?
That's a great segue to my next question. Do you think that there are any officers who are sociopaths or psychopaths?
Oh, definitely. The problem is with prison officer recruitment. It's a very old-fashioned way of recruiting, and some people are attracted to it. In the old days, you wore your uniform, your caps and that, your polished boots. A bit like the military, that sort of smartness. That'd have been no good for me. I'm not about that. But some of them, they get off on that. Others, they do say put good people in a bad place and they become bad. It's very difficult to maintain your integrity and be yourself in prison, because and American prisons will be the same. There's a way of doing things. There's sort of a prison
Systemic status
mentality.
quo kind of.
Well, a lot of people, although they might not participate in wrongdoing, you know, abusing prisoners or whatever, they may well not say anything or may be fearful of saying something. So what I say is probably a third of people were bad, whether that's lazy, because someone who's lazy is no good as a prison officer. You know, it weighs on you. And I worked with one guy who had died years, and he never lifted a finger to help anyone. So for me, he was a bad officer, him, you know. But the thing was that it doesn't weed him out. Any other job you do, I spent 20 odd years in engineering, yeah. So when I was in engineering, if my job was to run a machine and produce products, at the end of the week, if I didn't produce anyone, I'd be out the door. Yeah. You had to produce something. As a prison officer, there's no way of judging what that person is giving to the job. Consequently, lots of people who were in that job were super lazy. Like I say, in the old days, there were loads of staff and prisons were locked up all day. So they could get away with being lazy.
Definitely.
So I say, and there were some that were bad bullies. They bullied staff and they bullied prisoners. I was never part of that. And that's who I am. I was never going to be part of that. And those sort of people as well, they pick their audience. So, for instance, I never saw any particular wrongdoing when I was on shift because people would look who was around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and they know, Sam's probably going to report me, or Sam.
Well, it's not necessarily report them. I will be having none of them. It won't get that far. Do you know what I mean? And there were plenty of stuff like that. So I say a third were bad, whether that was lazy, bullies, or whatever. A third maybe struggled to be themselves. They were good people, fearful of saying anything. You know, the whistleblower scenario.
Yeah.
Yep. So they were fearful of saying anything. Third were really good. You know, I've seen plenty of staff pull other staff and say, no, we're not having that, or pack it in, or I'm not part of that, or this ain't going down, or whatever.
So was it ever more difficult dealing with colleagues than prisoners, or it was never that?
Prisoners were never a problem. Prisoners were never a problem to me.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
Severely mentally unwell, violent. Dealing with staff was far more difficult. if I had my own prison, you know, give me 6 prisoners and me all day, mate, it'd be great.
Isn't it interesting and kind of comical how that's almost true of every single job? It's like the hardest thing is actually dealing with the people that you're working with and for, not the actual work itself.
I've explained to my missus. My missus is a lovely lass and she's in the care industry. And what I've said to her is, where the product of manufacturing is people like prisons or care or looking after kids in homes, yeah? So that is your business, looking after people. You will get people who care. You will get people who do the job, but maybe not care as much. And then you'll get people, I'll use some of your terminology, who take the paycheck, don't care, and don't do anything for it. That's sadly how life is, I feel.
Definitely. There's always going to be those types of people, I think, that just go through the motions in every job. I have a question, though, about, because I did see a segment in one of your interviews with Sean where you guys talked about high-profile prisoners.
Yep.
How is... Because as far as I know, he's still alive. How is Mark Bridger still alive?
Right, Mark Bridger. Obviously in America, he'd probably be death row, wouldn't he?
I mean, he would have gotten shanked by now, I think, according to what I've learned from Sean.
The thing is, these people, they usually end up protected. So he may well live most of his prison career in some sort of protected environment, like solitary confinement.
Is he by anyone or probably not? He's probably completely alone.
I'm not sure. You
Mm,
know, he used to be on the healthcare where I were with some normal prisoners, um, some people who were unwell. Interestingly enough, prison near me, Wakefield Prison, they call it Monster Mansion, yeah, because that's where lots of your paedophiles and sex offenders go. So
mm.
Mark Bridger, because he killed a child, someone tried to kill him, a multiple rapist. This is how prisoners judge. So a
Wow.
multiple rapist who's serving life pinned him down and tried to cut his throat.
Wow.
So even though he's in an environment with paedophiles and sex offenders,
He's still at the bottom of the
they
rung.
don't correct.
Wow. Or at the ladder, but sorry, bottom of the ladder, bottom rung of the ladder.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah,
interesting. So even among the worst among us, there's that hierarchy.
definitely.
So
Plus,
you were working. No, go ahead. Go ahead, Sam.
no. I was just going to say the guy was his manner and demeanor. He was very condescending. You know,
Really?
he didn't interact like he had a certain. He thought he was better than everyone else because that comes into it as well. If you just blend in, you know, if you went onto a prison wing, quiet or whatever, just blended in, then maybe you get away with it. But he was very much about himself and you know, he would sort of look down aloof. He had that certain sort of air about him, an air of
Gotcha.
invincibility.
Right. That's pretty dangerous to have in prison, especially given the crimes he did, which is, I guess, why
Hey,
I was asking. But I didn't know that about him personally, that he was like that. And being around those types of people, not just him, but any of them, I'm sure wears on you. And you said you have PTSD, Sam. What are you doing to deal with that? And how would you, based on your experience dealing with it, do you have any advice you could give for other men and women who are in a similar
right,
situation?
PTSD. Uh, Again, ads. I always say to this to people, it's like my opening statement about PTSD. It's different for different people. Some
Mm,
people, you know, maybe if you're in a bad car accident, maybe suffer nightmares for a few months and then it's gone. You know, and it might only affect you for a short period of time. Others, ex-soldiers, frontline staff, firemen, um, things like this, it never stopped me going to work. Yeah, I used to have nightmares when you're dealing with incidents, but it never stopped me going to work. However, when the prison changed and it was quite clear I was becoming sort of anxious and angry, then it added to my woes. And I basically spent 2 years not sleeping with things constantly going through my mind. Not all of them bad, you know, some of them might be conflict with staff. So a bad incident could be made worse if staff behaved badly after the incident. Do you see that?
if they didn't respond correctly, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I put myself through some counselling with a psychologist. I self-referred myself, and I had 4 months. The psychologists were brilliant. We didn't do any sort of planned work like psychologists do. I basically had taught for an hour and a half once a week and just get things off my chest. However, initially, you know, you'd be quite euphoric and feel really good. The next day, I was terrible. I'd be angry, frustrated, anxious, a terrible thing. It made the therapist quite ill as well, you know, because I was obviously unloading on her, and psychologists and people like that, they actually see people to unload their experiences. Because obviously, if you're talking to people all day about death and things like that, then it can affect you.
Wears on you as
Um,
well.
what I would say, yeah, what I would say is his time is, in some cases, for me, is a healer. It's what, 4 years since I finished now. I still lay at night, couple of hours thinking about things still when I'm walking the dog. It doesn't get me as angry. I can talk about it now. If we went back 2 years and I was talking to you now, by the time we've done, my head would be exploding.
Oh, wow.
It made me unwell for a couple of days. Whereas now, I'm quite happy to talk about my experiences and things. But what I don't want with PTSD, as it comes more popular or more people start hearing about it, that is people dismiss it. It's like a bad back. I have a bad back. It doesn't stop me doing anything. My friend is bedridden 5 days a week and on painkillers for life. So, there's the difference.
Right.
PTSD may affect someone, like I said, in a bad car crash, few months. Somebody else might live with it. My friend knows a fireman. Are they called firemen over there?
Yeah, fireman. Yep.
Yeah. So he knew a fireman. Well, he still knows him. He was a neighbour. Been doing job 15 years. He ended up carrying a small child, about 10, badly burnt, dead out of a building. Couple of weeks later, had a bit of a breakdown. He lived next door to him. The whole street could hear him at night screaming. He'd wake up screaming. He still sees the guys now. He's never worked. He still sees him. He'll acknowledge him, maybe say morning, but he says, you look at him, there's nothing there. He's just dead. He's got no soul. So that one incident, obviously time hasn't made it any better for him. It's a good 10 years, my mate says, since that happened, and it just ended his life. He's got no life at all. So
that's tragic.
Exactly. So, we have to sort of tread careful. But
do you anticipate because
sorry, Ads, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you because of your experience with this and your friends because you guys are civil servants, public servants, and
yeah, that's right,
on the front lines in many senses and in many contexts, depending on your job. Obviously, if you're a prison officer, you're on the front lines of the prison, fireman fighting a fire. Likewise, in this plague pandemic, do you anticipate PTSD cases in a year and a half, 2 years after all this is done?
Oh, some people will suffer straight away. I'm sure people will leave the NHS and never go back.
Yeah.
There's people who it will be affecting now. When people say, how could you do that job? It's what you do. If you're working, when I worked on the healthcare, saw some horrendous things. Sites that I described in the book, and you'll read them and think you're horrific, but actually seeing, sort of a human being over 10 days stop taking medication, become unrecognizable, actually, sort of, without being too graphic for your viewers, sort of mutilating themselves and eating their own excrement and things like this. It doesn't matter how well it's described until you see that. And, it doesn't go away, because for me, I remember the guy, I used to play pool with him on associations when we had to play pool. And from 10 days, like you said, friendly, having a decent conversation and playing pool, to somebody who's sort of naked in a cell, rubbing excrement in their eyes and trying to mutilate themselves, it
does a number on you.
Of course it does. Yeah. And I think of that lad pretty much every day. It doesn't upset me now. There's a lad who's dead now called Alan Taylor. Yeah, deeply disturbed. 3 times we had him on the healthcare where I worked. He'd been abused as a kid. He'd been a squaddy, so he got some trauma from that. He was abused as a kid.
Could you explain that for our American viewers?
His father was probably one of the most prolific paedophiles this country's ever known.
Oh,
So
wow.
he
But
had
you said
five.
squatty? Is that what was the word?
No, no. So he dealt with that as a child. Then he
Okay.
signed up in the military. Yeah, we call them squaddies over here.
Oh,
So
okay. Gotcha.
he'd seen some action in the military as well. So that probably weighed on him. He was homeless. 3 times he came into prison and then left prison homeless. We had what they call a housing officer, yeah, who tries to get people places to live. And they couldn't find him anywhere. And then one day I was going into work and I heard it on radio that he'd been found in Manchester hung from a viaduct. Yeah. So I knew that lad really well. I knew his background. I could feel for him. His name comes into my head every day. I can no longer see his face. Yeah. But every day I think about that lad. Every single day. Just, maybe a fleeting moment or whatever. So these things do play on you, but you have no control, of your thought process or whatever. So
Did you
it's
make
difficult.
use of any other tools besides talk therapy to help you process this? And I'm sure you're still processing it, but it sounds like you've gotten through I guess the hardest part, it sounds like it.
I think now just trying to help people. I always said if I wrote the book, and it helped one person, but I know now there's lots of people. A good friend who's now finished with the prison service bought the book. It made him ill, and he said to me that could have been my book, Sam. That could have been my story. So it is helping people. People are seeing that it's not only them who feels like that. And I think the more people I talk to and, maybe not offer advice, but just experience or whatever, then I think helping people is the best therapy there is.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can buy people cars and things like that if you got money, but actually physically helping people, it's good for the soul, and you can also see the results of that. Like the
Yeah.
two lads who I used to lock up, who are now good friends. We get on really, really well.
Yeah. That's a great
These
story.
people, yeah, these people won't understand that. To me, it's just, it's
It's
no
such a
big deal.
rarity too in the prison systems in the UK and the US is hearing a story where two men got rehabilitated and now are acquaintances or on friendly terms with a former prison officer. I mean, you don't even hear about rehab, let alone, befriending former guards, or excuse me, officers.
No. Listen, that we just said that. That was a bit of thing first time with Sean. You can call me anything you like. There's a lad in Manchester, Frank. Yeah, he was a bad lad, career criminal. He lived not 100 meters away from me. When he wasn't in prison, the 5 years I lived where I did, the last place I lived in Manchester, he did a couple of sentences. He knew where my garage was, where I had my motorbike, and no one ever went near my garage because he was a bit of a jack the lad. Same as my cars never got touched, and we chat about things. And the thing is as well that these guys then tell you their stories. I've always said, in Manchester there was a lot of myths around crimes. And when you get to know these guys, they will, and it interested me. They will actually, once they get your confidence, they will actually tell you the truth behind the myths. So I found not only because I was working there, it is fascinating. But again, some of these lads, they are likable lads. End of the day, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. So
Definitely. And you're probably the most qualified person to say that because of how much time you spent with them. And I think it's great that you're making so much progress with your PTSD. I think mental health is, it's essential for achieving self-actualization. And without it, along with physical health, you're just not going to get there. So I think it's great that you are sharing this story, Sam. And you were there before. I was going to ask you, I believe if my dates are right, you were there before the riots and
no,
before.
after the
Oh,
riots.
I'm
Mate.
sorry. That's what I meant. After the riots, and after Myra Hunley and her partner were there as well,
Yeah,
correct? Okay.
yeah, way after.
Way after. Okay. I was just curious because it was such a high profile case for you guys in
Ads,
your country. Yep.
can I ask you something?
Of course.
Is it possible we could continue this?
Of
Because
course. Yeah.
I feel we've got plenty of time. But my
Definitely.
missus, bless her, is working long hours at the minute.
Definitely.
And she'll be due home anytime soon. And I really need to put her some.
No. Definitely. Thank you so much for chatting with me
No, do
today.
you know what? I've enjoyed it. You're an easy guy to get on with. And do you know what? It's nice. I'm happy to talk about the prison. There's plenty of things, if you want to, well, you'll have time to think. If there's other things you want to ask me, but just talking about what's happening in this country as opposed to your country as well.
Yeah,
because
if
media,
there's anything you want to add more to that, yeah, or as it pertains to the pandemic as well, yeah, please.
Yeah,
please
definitely,
continue.
mate. Because the thing is, I do watch YouTube and that. Your media, like our media, how can I say it without being impolite? They're not helpful. They're very negative. Our media over here, you want some positivity, and it's all doom and gloom. So I have no time for them. But
yeah, I agree. I'm to the point too where I'm, if it's a negative energy suck, I'm gonna cut it off, or cut it out eventually. So, but yeah, we definitely can continue, Sam. Is there any other?
If you want to come tomorrow, whenever.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in the same position you are. I mean, I'm not trying to infect people. Obviously, I if I wanted to, I could go out and be out and about, but I'm not doing that because I do try to take this seriously. But yeah, we definitely should. Let's keep messaging, and we'll find a time that works. Anybody else listening too? We're gonna try to hook up with Sam again tomorrow, if not sometime this week, to chat more about his book.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely, Sam. I appreciate it. And I will put the links to Sam's book in the description box below, as well as his Twitter. Do you have a YouTube, Sam, or any other social media?
Not YouTube yet. My plan is to get a channel up talking about mental health.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. We should do collabs for whenever you get that up too as well.
Definitely, mate. Definitely.
So everyone go follow Sam on Twitter. Tweet at him if you have any questions for him, and check out his book. If you want to look at reviews, it's got really good reviews on both Goodreads and Amazon, 4 and 5 stars, and lots of ratings. Looks like 1,400 ratings on Goodreads, 129 reviews, and on Amazon as well. It is on sale. Hardcover, 17 quid. Paperback, 6 quid. Audiobook and Kindle editions are also available if people want to check that out. Thank you so much, Sam. Let's talk again soon, and I hope you have a great evening with your wife, sir. Thank you so much.
Keep in touch, and we'll speak soon.
Will do, Sam. Cheers.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.